A super common reason I see for why people cannot deep squat is that during their attempts to deep squat, they're not accessing a true squat pattern, and instead they are trying to hinge their squat. Now, what does that mean exactly? Okay, as a heuristic, in a true hinge pattern, your torso is biased to stay in front of your thighs, whereas in a true squat pattern, your torso is biased to stay behind your thighs. Think about it. What are one of the requirements of a deep squat position? It's that your butt is touching your heels, or as close to it as possible. And so your body in that position is folded up like an accordion. You've got your shins pressed against your thighs, pressed against your torso. So your torso there is behind your thighs. And so if at the top of your attempt at a deep squat, you are hinging over and keeping your torso ahead of your thighs, if it stays that way, your torso is never gonna get behind your thighs, which is one of the requirements of a deep squat, butt to heels, okay? And so if this sounds like you, then this is what I would suggest you do. Start by standing tall. Sense where your center of mass is, your center of heaviness, for lack of a better word. Sense where that is on your body and put it right over your midfoot. Make sure that you're not kind of leaned onto your toes like this. Make sure that you're not biased too far back on your heels like this, okay? The ball of your foot and your heels should feel like they're bolted to the ground, but your center of mass should feel like it's directly over your midfoot. From there, I want you to raise your arms in front of you and feel how your arms can then serve as a counterbalance to keep your torso back a little bit. Okay, that's the key here. Get that feeling of, okay, torso back, and then drop straight down from there. As you drop straight down, you're gonna wanna keep that bias of torso stays back because you want that torso to stay behind the thighs. Okay, just keep going down, but only as low as you can maintain that torso back bias. Because if at any point during your descent, you default to, okay, torso is gonna come forward again, then you've lost the plot. Because you see from here, if I keep my torso ahead of my thighs like this, and I try to drop straight down some more via a leg press motion, see, I'm not gonna get all the way down. See, I'm trying, but so long as my torso stays in front of my thighs, I will never get my butt any closer to my heels. See what I mean? So torso has got to stay behind the thighs. Use your arms as a counterbalance to help you find that sensation. You should feel it sort of like being on the fence. Like, here's one side of the fence, and here's another side of the fence. Here's one side of the fence, here's another side of the fence. Stay on this side of the fence. And only go down as far as you can stay on that side of the fence. Okay? And then you can start doing this to your loaded squats. This applies to all squats, whether the weight is in front of you, like in a zercher squat, or a goblet squat, or a front squat. And it also applies to back squats. It's just a little trickier with back squats, because in a back squat, the weight being on your back does require you to lean forward a little bit. But still, if you want to squat ass to grass in a back squat, you still have to create that intention of torso stays behind the thighs all the way down, okay? And then from there, once you've got a decent grasp of that feeling of being on this side of the fence versus being on this side of the fence, then you just practice that over and over, maybe once a day, maybe once every 2 days, maybe once a week. It really depends on how fast you want to progress this. But you just keep doing that, and you're gonna find that point, that squat depth where you start to feel overly tempted to hinge over, that point is just gonna be lower and lower and lower until you're like, okay, I've met my goal. Okay, so my point here is that once you understand that torso behind thighs bias concept, and it's just a matter of applying it consistently over time. And there's your deep squat. Okay, and again, you can play with your stance. Depending on your hip anatomy or your current hip mobility, you might find you like toes forward more. You might find you like toes out a little bit more. You might find you like narrower or a little wider. Play with your stance. That's not something that everyone has to do one way of doing. The only thing that's universal here is that torso behind thighs concept. So play with all the other variables that you want. Put the weight here in your elbow crooks. Put the weight here on your collarbones. Put the weight here on your back. Okay, play with all of those other variables. Just find a way to help your body better learn how to keep the torso behind the thighs as it descends. And that is your ticket to being able to deep squat. Okay, so that's that. If you got any questions, please leave it down below. And if you are interested in more content about how to just squat and deadlift better, please consider following, because the reason I got into all of this stuff, this technical stuff in the first place, was because I was a frustrated powerlifter who felt like I had to choose between moving loosely and being able to lift heavy weights. I felt like lifting heavy weights always wrecked my body. And in the end, I found it's actually not true that lifting heavy weights has to beat up your body. You can have the best of both worlds, where you're as loose as you want, but at the same time, you're able to lift as heavy as you like. Okay, so that's all I wanted to share, and cheers.